Mr. Mangopoulos.
Medicare is nothing but socialized medicine. It's socialist. We need the free market to govern medicine. We need to get the government out of medicine. We need to get the government out of licensure, out of funding, out of research, out of education, out of records that invade our privacy. We need the government out. Since the inception of Medicare in 1967, the cost of medicine has increased 14-fold. Medicare does nothing but make medical expenses rise dramatically, and it hurts the poorest elements of our society. Susan Grimes Munsell, I'm shocked at you this evening. You claim to be an accountant. You claim to be an accountant, but you're sitting here talking to us about how to save Social Security and how to save Medicare. You want to eliminate corruption. I submit to you the whole system is corrupt and it's unconstitutional. Let's start talking about the Constitution tonight, shall we?
Our next panelist asking a question is Christina Rogers, and we will start with Ms. Munsell.
Many students have lived on their own since they were 18 and still have great difficulty receiving financial aid because they don't qualify as an independent under financial aid standards. What can be done to help those students who don't qualify as an independent under financial aid standards but clearly live without their parents' financial support?
I think that is an instance where the government has tried to have it both ways. As people can imagine, I'm fairly familiar with the Internal Revenue Code.
Mangopoulos?
Again, there is absolutely no constitutional mandate for the government to be involved in education, higher education, any kind of education. Education is not a right. Education...
Mr. Mangopoulos, I'm sorry to disturb you. We're having problems with the clock here.
Okay.
I want to make sure you get your time. So.
Okay, thank you.
Hope I didn't throw you off there.
We'll just start over.
Go ahead.
There is absolutely no constitutional mandate for the government to be involved in education, Susan Grimes Munsell. You ought to know better than that. The United States Constitution does not even mention the word education. Education is a private matter. And I want to say this. A person who learns a skill, let's just say he's an auto mechanic, and he doesn't need to go to college to engage in his business. Why should he have to pay taxes? Why should he have to pay the other person's education that wants to go to college? I'm in favor of education, but pay your own way. $150 billion a year is too much of a burden. College for the masses is a massive tax burden on this country. And I want to use my remaining time here. After that little constitutional lesson for you, Susan, I want to use my remaining time. You said that viability is important. Are you trying to tell me that that fetuses are becoming human beings sooner?
Mr. Mangopoulos, your time's up. Ms. Stabenow?
Thank you. There is not a more important item in a civilized society than making sure every single child has the right to a free public education.
Christina Rogers, your second question to the candidates, and we will begin with Mr. Mangopoulos.
Should a student lose a scholarship if the student is convicted of a drug offense?
Well, let me answer that by saying that there's absolutely no relevance to your question since the Constitution does not allow the federal government to be involved in education. So I'm going to use my remaining time to talk about what a civilized society does and does not do. A civilized society is a society that submits itself to the Ten Commandments. And one of the commandments, Debbie Stabenow, Susan Grimes Munsell, is thou shalt not steal. If you think it's civilized to steal some people's money to provide the education of others, then you're sadly mistaken. And if you think it's civilized to take full-term babies and deliver them all but the head and then carve their organs out and puncture their skulls and suck their brains out, then you don't know the meaning of the word civilized society. You need to wake up, both of you, to what the Constitution says. Don't sit here and make promises. Why don't you go home tonight? Here's your homework. Go home and read the Constitution. You'll find out that education is not even mentioned.
Mr. Mangopoulos, your time's up. Ms. Stabenow?
Thank you. This is an important issue, and I believe it needs to be addressed both at the board level, as is occurring now.
Ms. Munsell.
Thank you, Ms. Stabenow, for reminding me what the question was. I believe very firmly in local control. And that means local control in terms of decision making.
Mr. Randy Watkins will ask the candidates a question now, and we will start with Ms. Stabenow.
According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, Michigan in general, and particularly the 8th District, is the home to a number of anti-government militias and Klan groups. How would you use your position to teach respect for government and teach tolerance and respect for ethnic and racial diversity?
This is a very important issue for our country. I think the first way that I can contribute is by myself serving as a role model.
I believe it's very, very important for people to understand, and I think most of us in this room would agree, we have the best government system in the world. No exceptions.
Mr. Mangopoulos?
Susan Grimes Munsell, you do not have a message here tonight. You are Stabenow light. Listening to you, I'd just rather listen to Debbie. She gives the liberal position a lot better than you do. She does a better job. We don't need two liberals in this race. Debbie Stabenow does a fine job being the liberal, and I am the conservative alternative. Regarding the Southern Poverty Law Center, the Southern Poverty Law Center is a hate group as far as I'm concerned. It's run by radical socialist leftists. People need to know that. I frankly don't care what they have to say, what they have to report. I could care less. All right? Now, when you talk about tolerance and diversity, those are buzzwords. We don't have to tolerate flowers. We don't have to tolerate a sweet aroma. What we're being asked to tolerate is perversion. We're being asked to tolerate baby killing. We're being asked to tolerate sodomy and homo adoption. I'm not going to ever tolerate that kind of perversion. And the day I do, Susan, why don't you just set me up with an appointment with Dr. K?
Mr. Randy Watkins, you ask your next question, please, to the candidates, and the first response will come from Ms. Munsell. I'm sorry, Mr. That's right, Ms. Munsell. I'll get it together over here.
Well, being a tolerant individual of different ideas, I guess I'll pass over that and go to the subject of crime. Though I don't know why. I think it's anyway. Michigan is one of several states building new prisons in response to the crime issue. And it's clear that a number of people serving time in these prisons have committed nonviolent offenses. Is building new prisons the way to go, or should we find some alternative means of dealing with nonviolent offenders?
Thank you, Randy. The issue of crime is very, very important. But I'm sorry, but I cannot resist the opportunity to make a response to Mr. Mangopoulos.
Thank you.
I do want to say that I think you are an example of what a good system of government we have. Anyone can get on the ballot. And I would like to point out that there are substantial issues on which my opponent and I agree, but you can't get past one.
The Constitution.
And you can't get past the issue of abortion. And I think that that's an important issue. But there are many, many important issues that your member of Congress has to make decisions on. So I think people who are watching here tonight or people who are seeing this tape later need to think about the multitude of issues and need to think about what kind of a person you want in office.
Ms. Munsell, thank you. Mr. Mangopoulos?
Why, Susan, your last comment there struck me as being a little bit intolerant. So if you'll kindly show some tolerance for the things that I believe in, I would appreciate it very much. Now let me get back to the question, because you're just a liberal, and I don't want to listen to what you have to say anymore for the moment. The issue was crime. And I'll tell you what we need is to totally eliminate the prison system as we know it. What we need is to move to a system that punishes criminals in the following ways. Capital punishment for capital offenses, corporal punishment for corporal offenses, and economic restitution for what we call white-collar crimes. The prison bureaucracy doesn't do a lick of good. We need to eliminate